Joining us live on the record is the special agent in charge at the DEA in the St. Louis division, Mike Davis. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
I want to take a look at some numbers recently provided by the DEA. The agency just announced staggering results in cracking down on the drug cartels. These two Jalisco and Sinaloa drug cartels based in Mexico have been distributing deadly fentanyl pills throughout the country. Just recently, the St. Louis division alone, which is parts of Kansas, Missouri, and southern Illinois,
Yes.
reported 29 investigations in this Operation Last Mile. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yes.
72 arrests, seizing more than 1.3 million fentanyl pills, 100 pounds of fentanyl powder, more than 200 pounds of meth, and 405 guns, almost $500,000 in assets. That's a lot of drugs. How do you know where it came from?
Okay. Well, so Operation Last Mile, it was an enforcement operation conducted by the 23 domestic field divisions of DEA. And it targeted the end of the distribution chain. And that's going to be your stash house operators, your transportation coordinators, and your regional and local distributors. And typically what happens is once the drugs enter into the United States, most of them, of course, coming from our southwest border, it comes into areas like Los Angeles, San Diego, and Phoenix.
And you've worked in LA before.
I did work in LA for 4.5 years prior to arriving here in St. Louis about a year ago.
So you're not just seeing things arrive on your doorstep, you're seeing them cross the border. You've seen that over the course of your career.
Absolutely. I've actually been to the ports of entry in San Isidro and Otay Mesa. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. According to a 2018 report from the U.S. Sentencing Commission, more than 4 in 5 fentanyl-related arrests in this country are American citizens. It seems clear this isn't merely a problem with foreign nationals, is it?
No, not just foreign nationals, but because yes, some of them may be how the drugs are actually getting here, but these are local dealers that are gang members and local distributors that are distributing this poison and putting it actually on our streets, and which is causing, of course, overdose deaths.
And these are synthetic drugs that are cooked up in a lab. So, I understand that there's a belief that a lot of the chemicals originate in China.
Yes.
Do we know that for sure?
Yes.
And nowhere else, or other places too?
Well, what we do know is and also India. There's been cases where we've actually tracked it to India.
How much of this problem originates at the southern border compared to other ports of entry flying over from overseas? How much of it starts at the southern border crossing?
Unfortunately, it's quite a bit that's actually coming into the United States from the southern border. And like I said, once it gets here, they go into stash houses throughout the southern border, cities like Los Angeles, San Diego, and Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And these stash house operators, these are individuals that are hired by the cartels to oversee that stash house. These are bulk quantities of all different types of drugs, but mainly synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Mm-hmm. At some point during the distribution process, transportation coordinators will hire commercial tractor trailer drivers or private individuals to transport these drugs on our interstate system, and these drugs head eastbound to different hubs throughout the United States, including Kansas City and St. Louis, here in St. Louis, right here in the heartland. Once it arrives here, then it's on the regional and the local drug distributors to actually distribute it to ultimately users.
I wonder if you could describe the danger and the duty that officers in your agency face and perform. A lot of people might think about the DEA and think, oh, I've seen Breaking Bad, or I've seen The Wire, or they'll think of some TV show they saw. But when I read through the press reports and the releases recently, there's new information from the DEA that you're looking at TikTok and Facebook and WhatsApp and,
yes,
and different social media sites. What's the connection? Are there agents that are white collar in essence, that are looking through cyber information to try and trace down where these drugs are coming from? How does that work?
Absolutely. The drug cartels are actually using social media to facilitate the distribution of the drugs that are hitting our streets.
What would that look like if I saw it on my feed? Or how does it present to the public?
Okay, so for instance, when I was in Los Angeles, for instance, there was a site. It was called Offer Up. I could type in blue shorts or a blue dress, and as soon as you type in blue, then all type of basically ads would pop up
Targeted
offering
ads.
Absolutely,
Including for drugs.
For drugs, because and when
How is that legal?
when I say blue, it's because of the blue oxycodone 30 milligram pill, and that is what we see here the most here in St. Louis is those blue pills, and you have drug distributors that will bring it directly to your front door, and unfortunately, it's affecting our young adults, our teenagers.
Mail order fentanyl.
Mail order fentanyl.
Okay, one of the things we like to do on the record is to put things in context and give some numbers, some measure of just how tragic and how harmful this poison you called it, how harmful it really is. Data from the CDC, and I think we have a graphic here, it shows a drastic spike in fentanyl overdose deaths starting sometime in 2015 or 2016, continuing unabated and an upward climb until now. Meth rose at a similar pace, but at a much lower overall level. Is there just more supply? Is there more demand? What's driving this?
It's a little bit of both, unfortunately. The supply has gone up, and we know when the supply is going up because that's when we pay the lowest amount for the drugs. When we're doing our undercover operations and we're going out there and we're buying drugs,
the price goes down. That means there's more out there.
The price right now is very low. And of course, unfortunately, there is a large demand here in the United States, and Missouri included. So, you know, that's what we're seeing right now. And
yeah, we hear a lot of political rhetoric around topics like these. I wonder if you can provide some important facts and context around how drugs get here to the heartland from the southern border. We know that more than 2.7 migrants crossed the U.S. southern border last year, but I imagine not all of them carrying a little baggie of powder with them. Most of them probably weren't. What's the scope? How many of the people crossing the border are doing so with intent to do the cartel's bidding?
Well, what I can say is that I don't believe that every person that's crossing the border is, of course, bringing in drugs, and I definitely don't see that. But there are some. There are many, unfortunately, and they're bringing in these drugs into the United States, and it's hitting our interstate system, and of course, eventually going directly to drug distributors at the regional and local level.
I suppose a challenge for the DEA is filtering out and identifying the sources.
Yes, that every case that we open here in St. Louis and throughout DEA nationwide, the overall intent is to work it back to the cartel responsible for producing it.
There was El Chapo, there was his sons, the Chapitos, who were indicted
recently,
not arrested yet. But there's a lot of that going on. All right, so what's the most helpful thing right now that, just on a practical standpoint, that the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol could do, the Congress could do? What's a specific targeted thing they could do to make the DEA's job easier and stop these drugs from reaching Americans?
Well, of course, more money for our enforcement operations. That's always key.
So defunding the police is off the table. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
But what can they do proactively that goes beyond just throwing? Is there a specific policy, or is there something they can do to help identify beyond just funding?
Well, I would say, besides funding, I would say definitely put more pressure on the social media platforms, Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok. Because unfortunately, a lot of our kids are actually ordering their drugs up from those platforms. And you no longer have to go to the neighborhood, the bad neighborhood to get your drugs. You order up, and next thing you know, a dealer is there at your front door.
Well, it's not every day we get a DEA special agent in charge on the record, but we're very glad to have you. Thank you for providing some important context about something that we know is plaguing a lot of American families.
Thank you.